Welcome to the Lowestoft Town Council meeting of the Town Hall Project Committee at Hamilton House in Lowestoft. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. With me here in Hamilton House are Sheila Moss-King, Project Manager, Councillor Andy Pearce, Councillor Bernie Rappensberger, Helen Johnson from East Suffolk District Council, Councillor Wendy Brooks, Ben Porter from East Suffolk District Council, and myself, Sonia Barker, Chair of the Project Committee. And we have Sarah Foote, our Acting Town Clerk for Lowestoft Town Council, and Taylor Williams, Minute Clerk. So welcome everybody. Fire evacuation procedure for Hamilton House. Welcome everyone. The fire alarms are tested every Monday morning. There are no fire alarms tests planned for this morning, and so should the fire alarm sound, it will be for real. In the event of a fire, please follow the instructions that will be given and congregate on the grass verge to the side of the Quick Fit building. The fire exits are the main stairwell to the reception area and a separate flight of stairs in the Nest Point breakout area. Reporting at meetings. In the interest of openness and transparency, councillors and members of the public are reminded that the law permits any person to film, record, photograph or use social media in order to report on the proceedings of a meeting of the council or its committees when they are open to the public. The Town Council will record this meeting. Filming and photography will only be permitted from the area designated. No flash photography or additional lighting should be used without prior consent. Anyone wishing to report on the meeting should notify the clerk or chair so that they can be afforded reasonable facilities. People under the age of 18 or other members of the public not wishing to be filmed or photographed should notify the clerk or chair and should sit in the area designated for this purpose. Improper conduct or any disruptive behaviour could result in expulsion from the meeting. Can you also ensure that your mobile phones are changed to silent or switched off and adhere to the non-smoking policy for this building and the grounds of Hamilton House? So welcome again to everybody here. Item 62, to receive and consider approval of apologies for absence. Have we had any?
Yes, Chair. Apologies received from councillors Patience and Youngman, both with reasons provided.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a proposal to accept? Thank you, Councillor Rappensberger, and a seconder, Councillor Pearson, a vote to accept the apologies. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 63, declarations of interest and dispensations. To receive declarations of disclosable, pecuniary, other registrable and non-registrable interest from councillors and members on items on the agenda. Are there any at all from anyone? No. If you suddenly think of something during the meeting, just flag it up to me. Thank you. 63.2, to consider written requests for dispensations for interest and note dispensations granted. Have we had any?
None received, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Taylor. 64, to consider the draft minutes of the meeting on the 15th of February 2023. Have we read those? They have been circulated. Yep. Can I have a acceptance officially? Councillor Rappensberger has proposed, seconded by Councillor Andy Pearce, and a vote, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 65, public forum, an opportunity for the public to make comments on any matters on this agenda and to consider any advanced comments from the public. Have we had any, Taylor?
So no advanced comments received and no one's in attendance on the webinar.
Okay, thank you. Item 66, finance, budget monitoring and payments. 66.1, to note and consider income and expenditure, including 66.2 we've got to monitor the budget. So have we've had a list of those, haven't we? From you?
Yes, so in my project report, progress report to you, you can see that we've spent £240,721 and 49 pence so far. However, that's going to change quite significantly in the next couple of days when we pay the monies over to UKPN for to secure the substation and to get that work started.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, so can I just clarify that the latest round of professional fees that were submitted have been authorised in the last couple of days, so they should have gone into relevant accounts, and the budget allocation for the substation purchase pending claim and like the reclaim from the lottery has been agreed, so that's all in place, ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No, so we just note that, don't we? Yep, thank you. 66.2 to monitor the budget. Well, in a way, we've just done that.
There's no change to the budget at this stage on the project budget itself.
Right, okay, thank you. Item 66.3 to consider any payments for approval. Well, I think you just said, councillor Pearce, haven't you, that did you mention that some payment approvals have
The
been
payment's
made?
been approved,
Yes.
and because we have to basically pay it up front and then reclaim it from the lottery, and we're waiting for permission to start, the budget allocation for where the payment for the substation will come from has been agreed. But obviously, when the reclaim goes into the lottery and we get that money back, that will need to be replenished in those accounts because it's not coming from a single budget.
Right, okay, thank you. Again, that's just a note. 66.4 to consider reporting requirements for the NLHF and Towns Fund. I think, have we already?
I think we've already
Done
dealt with
this,
that.
haven't they?
Yes, I think we have. Sorry, I think this is a vestigial item.
Yeah, yes.
I was going to say that the reporting requirements are tied into one another. So the lottery quarterly reports will be sufficient for the Towns Fund,
Yes,
and every month we get the project update. So yeah, everything's kind of
yeah, that's
as
what I
is
thought.
agreed.
We should just record thanks to East Suffolk Council for
Oh,
the
yeah.
first two, the first payments from both the East Suffolk Council grant and the Towns Fund grant. So we've had advanced priming of the financial pumps from them, which is a really
Right.
helpful thing. It makes a big difference to the cash flow on the project.
Yeah, it
So,
does. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so officially, yeah, to make sure that, I'm sure you have minuted it, say that, to thank East Suffolk District Council for that, because that's key, isn't it, to getting everything lined up. Yeah, really good. Thank you. So thanks for that. You can relay that back to the powers that be. Thank you. 67, Town Hall Project Tender Evaluation Subcommittee. 67.1 to receive and note the draft minutes and confidential note of the Town Hall Project Tender Evaluation Subcommittee on the 15th of February. Well, I think, yeah, councillor Brooks.
Right. I couldn't find these because they're not in the, are they in a separate subheading? Because they're not with the town hall in the members area. I don't know if they've got another little heading they've gone under.
They're under agendas.
Under agendas.
Project Tender Evaluation Subcommittee minutes.
Yeah, they are there.
Well, they're on the public area.
Only the public minutes, confidential note will be in them, so.
I've got town hall project, draft application, planning application, Reba 3. But nothing else.
Town Hall Project Tender Evaluation Subcommittee minutes.
That's on the
Under
website.
agendas, Town Hall Project Committee 14th of March.
Yeah, under the Lowestoft Town Council website,
So the
under agendas.
confidential minutes are on the
Confidential.
public
No.
area. They're not confidential.
No,
It looks, it's like any other agenda where we have a confidential item that the minutes of the public bit, which was minimal, I agree, are on there.
they are on
And
there.
just a note to say it then went into confidential session to decide a confidential issue, which is embargoed, as we know.
And the
Mm.
confidential thing that we're discussing is on there.
No,
No.
it just
On the
says
members
that we went
area.
into confidential session to discuss, but the actual minutes of the bits that were in public session are on
Yeah,
there.
okay.
So just to summarise, this is about the evaluation committee
Yes, minutes.
that met to appoint the evaluation consultancy for the project.
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing because I looked at this and thought I've no idea what the tender evaluation subcommittee was because it sort of needs the
Yes.
word evaluation in there twice, which would seem mad.
Yeah. Well, I missed that because I was away ill, so yeah, but I have seen those.
Proposal to accept those draft minutes.
Councillor,
Except it's a true and accurate record of the public session, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
anybody else who was there would second?
Don't need to be
We,
there.
I
to
know,
second.
okay, well, Helen was there and second and a vote, please. I know you don't
Only
have
just
to,
found it.
but it's, thank you, that's unanimous. That's, I think. Councillor Brooks, were you accepting the
I'm utterly
minutes?
lost and confused, so I'll agree, yes. I'm
Okay, right.
In favour.
Good, thank you.
Wendy, where we have a public and confidential session, there are public minutes for the public bit, and then there's a confidential note for the confidential bit. We have the public minutes for the public bit, we don't have a confidential note for the confidential bit,
Yeah,
so we'll just agree in the public bit.
yes, in public.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Right, 69.
Don't seem to
Hey.
get it.
Sorry, 68. To consider the appointment of a procurement consultant, some aspects may be confidential. Right, well, we can't say. Or can we? No, we can't say it.
I would deal with it in confidential.
Deal with that. Right, that
Sure.
goes into confidential.
That's just the.
Oh, no.
Items,
That's just the
item
agenda.
69. Item 69, to appoint a shortlist and interview panel for the role of heritage manager. Right, have we got any timescale for this at the moment, Sarah?
What's
Because
the
usually
closing
you,
date?
you do one and then we work
Ah.
back, don't we?
Right, got it.
That top one.
I have to
Yeah.
refresh my memory what the closing date is. We've had
Yeah.
few applications, but I can't remember the closing date.
We had some. We did have a week penciled out for when we thought we would do the actual
Yeah.
assessment, the interviews, etc. But I'm just trying to find out when it is. Because we shifted it. I know when it was, but I don't know what it is
Closing
now.
date's the 25th of March. so
Right.
Then we talked about the Easter break, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. So
So that's the day before full council, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, right, get it in my head as to the space we've got. And then as you say, you've got Easter.
When are the interviews?
Could I suggest that as an item goes on the full council agenda for the 26th to consider a delegation to appoint? Otherwise, we're in the realm of either waiting a full month or calling an
yes.
extraordinary full council meeting.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, the delegation, I think, it may, because it's an employee, there's probably not a delegation to the project committee. So I think we need to consider one at full council.
It is, however, funded for 5 years by the project.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I think rather than
wait.
wait until after full
Yes.
council and then have a debate about whether we've got delegation, make sure we have one at full council.
Okay, well, I'll second, that's a proposal to go to full council. Yeah, I'll second that and a vote, please. That makes sense. So we get ahead of ourselves if we can. Thank you. So back to this, you said the 8th of April was
the
the,
week commencing the 8th of April is the candidates have been advised that that's when interviews will happen. We've got the project committee on the morning of the 11th of April, so I don't know if you want to do them before then, so you can make a recommendation, or
right,
there'll already be a delegation in place by then, so.
yeah,
So we will be looking for people to be available for interviews potentially on 2 days,
2 days.
so that we can give the offer of different dates.
Yeah.
So we
Right.
maximise the ones that we interview. And we said we were going to interview. Did we say we were going to interview a certain number? Up to 4, up to 5?
But that's what we would
Up to
normally
3?
do.
Yeah.
If we have an opportunity to do that, but I don't
Yes.
think we did say that.
Right,
you know?
okay.
Up to
So I
4.
suggest that we, they are before the project committee, but I suggest that we actually ask for the delegation to go to the evaluation panel because if it's an employee, the members will probably be drawn from personnel. I mean, there might be other councillors as well. But it's not a consultant post, but equally, same thing as with a consultant. If it then goes back to the main committee and there are people there who haven't seen the applications, haven't seen the applicants, how can they make an informed bid? So I'd probably suggest that we seek a delegation from full council to the evaluation panel and then just inform the project committee and personnel, like who's been appointed at the appropriate time once the person has accepted.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So,
Oh,
sorry if I may,
that's all
Chair.
right.
So the agenda item is to appoint a panel.
Yeah,
Is councillor Pearce proposing that the panel is the evaluation subcommittee Because I thought at some point we would like to,
Project committee will not be the evaluation panel for an employee.
No.
That was agreed at the outset. The
Yeah.
evaluation panel would probably be from personnel.
Yeah,
The project, I mean, Sheila will need to be there to advise anyway.
Yeah.
Because there will be a project, because there's gonna be a dual report, isn't there? Day to day, they're gonna be under the management of the Heritage Project Manager, but for all HR reasons, they're gonna report to a member of staff.
and also I think as well, it's important that you have people, yes, who are on personnel. I fully accept that, but you also perhaps need to have, well, probably one or two councillors from here who actually have knowledge and have met, or even events. I'm just thinking,
I would
who
suggest
know
personnel
about the
that-
heritage
that the
manager
evaluation
role.
panel, Councillor members are probably people who are members of the project committee and personnel.
Yes.
So there needs to be at least one member of staff on there as well.
Oh,
I
yeah,
suggested to Sarah.
absolutely. Yes.
And then Sheila will need to be there in an advisory capacity.
Yes.
Sheila or Jess.
Jess would be better, but
Yeah.
maybe both of us.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got people with some expertise in that. Yeah. Councillor Brooks.
Well, I'm going to disagree because usually these things go to the whole council. Like people are asked, if we're employing an employee, which the heritage manager is, and it's a significant post. I think the whole council should be invited to join the appointment committee because that is standard practice. It has never been delegated to personnel. It's always been, whole council has been invited if they wish to join a committee to let staff know, and the panel will be drawn up from that.
Councillor
Actually,
Pearce.
be clear, appointments have been delegated to personnel. Membership of the evaluation panel, yes, can be open to full council.
Yes.
But the recruitment process in many cases has been delegated by full council to personnel, even though there might be non-personnel members on the evaluation panel. This post is quite different from any that we've done before in that this person will be seconded to the project team for at least 18 months before they become a member of the staff team, and it's going to be lottery funded for the first 5 years. So it's kind of a hybrid post that we've never had to deal with before. I have absolutely no problem in opening up membership of the evaluation panel to all councillors, but the people on the evaluation panel need to understand the project as well as our
Yes.
personnel procedures. And if somebody joins it who is clueless about the project, how are we going to be able to evaluate? But it can be opened up to them and they can put their names forward, and then if it's oversubscribed, a decision will need to be made.
Yeah.
But that's why I think for councillor members, it probably needs to be somebody who understands both the personnel and the project side. Because otherwise you maybe got to have one councillor who's on the project, one isn't, so between them, they've got the right. Well, if you've got someone on there who understands both, they can evaluate with both things in mind. But there definitely needs to be a member of staff involved, as there is
Yes.
on all our other evaluation panels for employees. And because of the specialist project, the initial period of secondment to the project team and the need to understand the heritage project, Jess needs to be there in an advisory capacity
Yes.
to produce advisory scores and answer questions.
Councillor Brooks.
Yes, I don't see the personnel committee as necessarily being experts. So in terms of the heritage manager post, so that I take what you're saying about expertise and people needing to know what the role involves. That's absolutely crucial. But I don't think that the personnel committee members are necessarily any more clued up than ordinary councillors, which is why I think it should. I think it's the principle. I had this argument, I think a couple of years ago, when somebody decided that they were going to do the chair of this and the chair of that being on an interview and panel. And I challenged it because I was never invited to join anything. It's about openness and transparency, because we know at the end of the day, the people putting their names forward are going to be few and far between. And we'll hopefully know what it's about. I see no problem with it being, if we're drawing from other councillors outside of the Town Hall Project Tender Evaluation Subcommittee, should be open to all councillors.
And councillor Pearce.
Yeah, so I don't want to be going round and round having 2-year-old conversations. The person who Wendy's talking about, who thought only chairs should be on the committee, was not a councillor. That was a member of staff. So we don't need to dwell on that. I didn't say personnel or the experts, but in the scheme of delegation on the council, full council has delegated personnel and staffing related matters to personnel. That's just to do with the scheme of delegation. But as I'd already said, membership could be open to full councillors, but it would be coordinated through the personnel committee. That is standard practice under the town council scheme of delegation, that personnel coordinates recruitment. It doesn't mean only personnel members could be on it, but it needs to be somebody, both the project and the personnel aspects of the role. And it needs to be someone who can get their hand around the fact that we are going to be recruiting someone who's going to have a dual report for the first 2 years. That is not something we've ever had to done before, so they are going to have to think down 2 lines.
Thank you.
And that will need to be made clear when we're asking for volunteers for the panel. But it can go out to full council, but it needs to be, we can't wait until the 26th to decide the panel.
Sheila. Thank you.
I was going to argue completely the opposite, to say that I think that because this is funded by the Heritage Fund, they're paying entirely for this position for the first 5 years. It is a position that is delivering against the outcomes in this project that I don't think that anyone who isn't a steering committee member should be evaluating that position. I think it would be a major risk to have someone else who doesn't understand how important the activity plan is, who doesn't understand how this whole project hangs together on the community engagement side and how that delivers into our interpretation plan. I think it increases risk significantly. However experienced an interviewer or however experienced a sort of personnel advisor might be, they don't know the project like the people around this table.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
And I agree, and that goes to the heart of the dual report. It needs to be someone who understands the project inside out and understands the staffing nature of this role, because this person's project role is not going to end with the project.
No.
At the end of next year, because it's going to be a 5-year post, they have to continue to deliver funding deliverables for several years beyond that. So that's why I think because we don't want to overload the panel and have 10 councillors on there either. So I think that's why the councillor members, I think, need to be members who understand the personnel issues, yes, but also understand the project, so that they can speak to both items. Other people can apply, yes, but I don't think they are going to have the knowledge to be able to evaluate. And I agree with that.
Okay, so Councillor Brooks, can you be quick on this, because we need to move on.
Yeah,
and
I
get
have to
this
say
sorted
I agree
out.
with Sheila that it should be from, it shouldn't, that's what I'm opposed to the personnel line, you know, it goes, that's why what I am objecting to. So I think 5 years is a long time. We've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 LTC councillors on this who attend. That's quite a large pool to choose from, isn't it? So do we really need to go outside of this?
Councillor Pearce.
So I didn't say it should come from personnel members. I suggested it should be members who are on this committee and on personnel, because then they would understand both the project and the staffing issues. I didn't say it should come from personnel. The personnel was basically so, you know, and 3 of us are anyway. But yes, other people understand the staffing things who aren't on personnel, but somebody on there also needs to understand the staffing report, because it is not exclusively a heritage project either. But the members on this committee will understand both. So if it is drawn from members of this committee, they will also understand the staffing angle.
Yeah.
But that is the thing. We are evaluating someone who is going to have a dual report, and that needs to be taken into account.
So
Okay.
Chair,
Right.
if we go back to the agenda item, we do need a resolution.
Yeah, we do. So Councillor Pearce, what did you propose something a little while ago?
How many are we looking on the panel? 4?
4.
4 plus an advisory position from, I don't want Jess to be counted as one of the 4.
No.
So if Jess is going to be there in an advisory capacity
and
to speak to
member
the,
of staff anyway, it
Yeah.
would be there.
so Sarah,
Sarah.
or another if Sarah wants to appoint someone in her place. But Sarah,
Mhm.
yeah. Um,
And then we need three councillors.
You're on personnel and on this.
Well, I don't know that everyone has.
No,
to
I
be on
don't- I
personnel,
don't-
but
Have to be
maybe
on
a couple of them
I
don't
suggested they should be on personnel because for the staffing thing, and normally a recruitment would be handled by personnel. But the primary
It's
self chair,
yes.
Wendy, Bernie, and myself
Yeah,
on the panel
four.
with Sarah. We would be the 5 panel members with Jess there as producing
Advisor.
advisory scores and being on hand to answer any questions. Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
that's my proposal.
Okay, I'll second that.
And
Sarah.
I appreciate it's probably one person larger than the panel, but given the role that this person is going to have, if they
Yes.
can't handle a panel of 5 people, there's probably questions to be asked anyway.
Yeah, and what is good about that is you've got a different levels of experience of the project, some that go back to 2020 and some that are recent, but all of us have been involved in various evaluations and awareness of this project. That's the key thing, I feel, the experience of that. Okay, thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Well, I'd like to suggest that actually Chris is also on the panel as a member of staff, so we have Sarah and Chris. So that we've got 4 councillors, 2 staff. I mean, one staff is maybe not a fair representative. It doesn't have to be Chris, but
No.
Chris is the person that comes to my mind.
Look, I've just made a proposal.
Yes.
If you don't agree with it, vote against it.
Well, is it?
Yeah,
Wendy,
okay.
I've made a proposal.
I just think it's.
You don't have to agree with it.
No, I was going to second it and
No,
yeah.
no.
Sheila.
Can I just say that we are getting to the point where this feels like we're appointing a prime minister, not a
Yes,
heritage manager.
Yes.
I think a panel of 6 is
Is-
excessive,
Yeah.
and I think a panel of 7 would. It just looks like we can't rely on each other. We don't trust each other. You know, that
Yes,
we're
yeah,
covering
yeah.
all options.
I think, look, my proposal is for a panel of 5 with Jess as advisor.
Yeah, and then
That's
if,
the proposal.
and the good thing about that is if somebody's ill or something happens, you've got enough, you probably end up with 3 councillors, we
This
don't know.
heritage manager
It's-
is going to be someone who can deal with multiple people from multiple backgrounds, multiple disciplines. They should be able to handle a panel of 5 people, provided they're not all
Yes.
speaking at once. Which
Exactly.
they won't be.
No, they won't. Or I'll second that and a vote, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. Okay, so.
Apologies, Chair, we do still have one other outstanding proposal. It got a bit lost in the
Oh, did it get
discussions about
lost?
the delegation they want.
Oh, yes. Was this to go to? Was that the
So
delegation?
what I have so
Sorry.
far is an item on full council to consider a delegation, but I didn't really get many further details. of what
No,
that
sorry.
delegation
we
was.
got-
So that is-
thanks,
That is
Taylor.
basically because there's no standing delegation to any, when we go out for employees, and this will be an employee post, even though it's
Yes.
lottery funded for
It's
the first 5
unusual,
years.
this.
So normally you'd go out, you'd have an evaluation panel. They would make a recommendation to personnel, who'd make an onward recommendation to full council. We can't have a month delay from the panel to do it. Normally our lead-in times are built that there's no time imperative when we're recruiting a member of staff. There is with this one. So what I would, and obviously we've got the specials, so I would just like full council to delegate the appointment to the evaluation panel so that it can be confirmed on the day.
Okay, I'll second that. Are we clear about this? Okay, good, and a vote, please. Yep, that's unanimous. Thanks for that, Taylor. Yes, we went off at a tangent there, but we got back in the end. Thank you. 70, to consider a contract for the contract administration. Sheila, this is your.
Yes, this is
zone.
yes, so we've got an evaluation for the evaluator, and we've got a contract for the contract administrator. It's very
Glad-
confusing,
I'm glad
isn't
you
it?
explained that. Thank
So the
you.
contract administrator is the person that we appointed at evaluation panel just before Christmas time.
Yeah.
And we appointed HAT Projects, as you recall,
Yeah.
to look after it. So a query has come from HAT Projects to say, do we want to have a separate contract, or do we want them to incorporate that in their contract as a design team?
All right.
So there is capacity within the REBA contract for them to tick the boxes to say, yes, we're doing contract administrator. What it would mean, however, is that we would need to take the time to compare that to our specification to make sure that the boxes they've ticked match what we asked them to do, or else
Right,
we'd be nowhere if we had any issues in the future.
right.
The alternative is that we set up our own contract for the contract administrator, and
Mhm.
what you've done in some cases is you've just relied on the terms and conditions in the tender documentation
Mhm.
plus the specification to form the contract.
Right,
But equally, you could decide that you want to write up a separate contract for that contract administrator. I don't know what you want to do.
what is
hence it's-
normal practice, would you say, as somebody with expertise in this area?
I've seen it done on an RICS contract, which would be if it was a surveyor doing it. I've seen
Yeah.
it done on a REBA contract. In this particular case, we split the contract administrator out from either of those positions, but we now have put it with our design team. I don't particularly have a view on what's good and bad on it,
Right.
but we do have a very detailed specification of what we want them to do. And my only concern about a tick box on the REBA side might be that there's something that gets omitted.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Brooks?
From thinking, I haven't got a clue. On balance, I think a separate contract. That they have a discrete contract. So that things don't get missed. It wouldn't be an enormous amount of work, I don't imagine, but just kind of keep things clear.
Is this going back to the conversation we had right at the top of this project where I think Helen and Ben were saying this should sit with the architect design lead? I said, should it sit with the contract administrator role? Was that not?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not particularly.
I thought we did have a discussion.
You did have a discussion at the very beginning of the project about, I think this was something that happened when you were having meetings with the Heritage Fund.
Okay.
And who was going to take on contract admin. We split it out so that we had the option to have the QS decide to do it, to apply for it, the design team to apply for it, or a third party. So it actually gave you the widest opportunity. The fact that the tender happens to have been won by the design team is almost sort of coincidental.
I'm not
Right.
I'm not querying who it sits with.
Right.
I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
basically, is this basically the reason that we don't have a separate contract at the moment because it's a component part of another contract?
No, not particularly. We don't have we do have a separate contract in the tender documents. It normally says that until or unless a separate contract is put in place, the terms and conditions in the tender plus the specification forms the contract. It might just be worthwhile taking a bit of advice on that, because the terms and conditions are things that I think you picked up from East Suffolk Council a long time ago, and it might just be worthwhile having someone cast their eye over it.
The other thing I was thinking as well, if you have the same organisation with two different contracts, what if when certain work is done, you have a time lag, even though they're the same people? Couldn't that get a bit muddled if you've got two separate contracts? I mean, I'm just thinking about costs, whether it would cost more, and secondly, whether that would hold things up. I mean, that's the only thing I was thinking about.
I don't think it would. I mean,
it?
it certainly wouldn't cost more as far as the work is concerned. The element would be there's either work to do to check that the REBA contract is matching the specification.
Yeah.
Or there's work to do to just have someone double check the terms and conditions that you have in the tender contract. In the tender.
Yeah, in the
if
tender.
that's going to form a contract.
Yeah.
Do the terms and conditions in the tender plus the specification give you something that if they did a terrible job and you wanted to sue them, you were able to do it.
Right. So you're more or less saying here, I get the impression that we should seek advice as to which way to go on this. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't
No?
think you need advice on which way to go. I'm just saying that if you decide to go for using the tender specification and the terms and conditions, I just think it would be prudent to have someone
Advice.
just read through it
and just
see.
to check it.
see what they think about it. Now, I'm slightly worried about that because that's potentially giving Sarah work to do, which she frankly doesn't need.
No, no, thank you. Councillor Brooks?
Sheila, you said you might need some advice on this. We have an HR person. Is that person? No, that wouldn't be any good. So who do you think is an appropriate person to give us some advice?
I would think that it would be a solicitor, a legal advisor, someone
A
who,
solicitor.
well, whoever looks, not a solicitor, whoever looks at your contracts at the moment. Do you have someone who looks at your contracts at the moment? I would think it would be, you know, it's not a massive appointment, but the contract administrator is quite an important role because they're the one that is keeping the project running smoothly. They're, you know, pulling everything together, almost arbitrating between different parties. And if it goes wrong, it can go badly wrong.
Yeah. Councillor Pearce?
So do we have a separate budget for the contract in this? So I know you said at the moment it's like with a design team, but that's not included in their tender, is it, in their fees? So we will have a separate budget for this?
Yes, we've always had a separate budget for
thought we did,
contract
but-
admin. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm thinking about timing, because obviously these people have started, correct? Or starting.
The contract administrator doesn't get going in anger until until the tender's out.
Okay, so we have some time. So can I propose that we run this past our solicitor in terms of what they would propose and that we go with that? That's my proposal.
If we can get confirmation of where the budget for the legal fees would come from.
I think they'd have to come from the project just to double check it.
Okay. So
Can I just ask you to get them to read quickly, Sarah?
Can I ask?
Seriously though, I will need an estimate of how much I've just signed up for.
Well,
right,
I know, yeah.
Speak to me separately.
thanks for that. Item, sorry, councillor Pearce?
Yeah, with that in mind, Sarah, when you speak to them, if they can't commit to a turnaround time, can we consider going out and getting bespoke legal advice as opposed to using our regular solicitor?
Yeah, I just know our regular solicitors engagements for next week is not going to be around, so.
Yeah, so if that's going to be a problem,
there might be another partner that can do it. Let's
Okay.
just leave it with me.
but unless they can guarantee it,
Yeah.
can we go out and just get bespoke advice from an appropriate law firm?
Yeah,
And can I make that proposal, please?
okay, I'll second that because, we need to get it done
Yeah,
ASAP.
right,
Thank
right.
you. So that's the second proposal on this item. Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay. Item 71, to consider a report from the project manager, including progress with the following. Do you want to go through these then, Sheila? Or- Thank you.
See what order they're in.
First one is review the programme plan.
Reviewing the program plan, right? I sent you a PDF of the program plan, but I thought it would
Yes.
be helpful. I just plug myself in.
Yeah,
If I actually take you through and just explain what it's showing you, because not
that would be
everyone is,
good.
not everyone's confident with Gantt charts. So,
Yeah,
right. So up on the screen, this
Mhm.
is the high level Gantt chart. So what I've done is I call it a program plan. Oh, that's better. Thank you. Wendy.
Yeah.
I call it a program plan because if you want to think of the different work streams within the project, within the program, are all like little projects in their own right. There's the building project, and
Mhm.
because of the amount of money and the amount of time that is spent on it, it tends to be the lion's share. And I think it's important for us just to be mindful that that is part of the program. It's not the whole thing. So what I've done on this project plan, program plan, I'm going to use it interchangeably. Sorry. What I've done in this is I've set up in the dark headings
Mhm.
are or the colours rather, I think will give you a better idea. If you look at the duration bars that we have in here, they're colour coded according to the sort of in the project within the project that they apply to. So first of all, there's just an overhead in here of project management, which is just keeping everything on track, making sure that obviously we've got the permission, we've got the PWLB, we still have to get permission to start. And then there's lots of project committee meetings, as you can see, happening in here. And then this section here is about funding. This is about drawing down the funds. And this section here is about reporting to the Heritage Fund and to yourselves as the key funders that expect regular reports. One of the things I should draw your attention to is we mentioned that the project, Andy, you used the words earlier when we were talking about the Heritage Manager. You mentioned that the project ends in 2 years' time. Well, it doesn't actually. It ends in September 2028.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm talking about
Right.
when the building becomes operational.
When the building becomes operational. But obviously we've got to run through to September 2028. I personally am not appointed to run through to that point. So at some stage, we need to work out how your final report and claim to the Heritage Fund is going to be done, and any interim claims that you do. The interim claims are relatively straightforward. And the Heritage Manager might well be able to pick up on that, but this final report and reclaim is a bigger bit of work, but it's so far away, let's not worry about it at the moment.
No.
Right, so then we've got the building contract, and I thought, given that I'm colour coordinating all of this, I'd make the building brown, because that helps you think of it as a building thing.
building,
Right, so this is the building work. So what we've got here is just a list of the main activities that need to happen in order to deliver this building contract. Duration is not the number of days work necessarily, it is the length of time that the task may take. So it's not about effort, it's about duration. And you can see we've got start and finish dates. And just to explain to you, when you look at the building contract, for example, you'll see that today's date is marked here. You'll see that we're specifying all the user requirements, and then you'll see that there's a long sort of line here, and it's got an arrow leading down into this task here. So once you've spent all the user requirements, that kind of feeds in at a long time in the future. That feeds into selecting and ordering all the furnishings and any equipment necessary. So the work we're doing at the moment, let me see, I'll have some notes on here. Let's go to my notes. Where we're specifying all the user requirements, I've got my little notes underneath this of the different elements that are involved in it. And these basically get ticked off as we go through. So we've been working on AV requirements, we've had the catering and so on. Security and fire, Michael and Paul were at a meeting yesterday, and we've got another session tomorrow on that. So there's all these different sort of bits and pieces underpinning these tasks. So what the arrows are doing is just saying when one thing is dependent on another. And they're slightly more sophisticated than that, because sometimes you just need to have started one task for it to then feed into another one. You don't need to have ended something. So you can have some different relationships on what happens where. The reason you build this in is because what it tells you is what the implication is if you have slippage. So if, for example, I'll just have a wee hack. Let's say we don't get the tender out until, let's say we slip by 2 months. We don't get the tender out until the 4th of July. Yeah, I want to do that. Here we go.
Yeah.
So you can see we've got some slippage, and when we get down to when it would have been better if I'd shown you when we opened, wouldn't it? The town hall wouldn't then open till early June 2026 on that basis. If I just undo that and get everything back to how it is, currently we're looking at an open date of the 20th of April. So that's why you have all these dependencies, because it allows you to understand if you don't do something, what's the implication of it.
So Sheila, so what's that done to cost? Because obviously 2 years ago, we were looking potentially at summer next year. I know why we haven't hit that. Please don't think I'm having a pop. I'm not, but we were. Then more recently, we were looking at December next year, January the year after. Now it's April. What has that slippage done to the budget?
So the main impacts on the budget will be on professional fees, not so much for the design team, because they're basically doing the work they have to do. It's just taking longer to do it. The main problem that you'll have is for people like me, because I'm going to be around for about 6 months longer than planned, and also anyone else whose sort of work is being dragged out just by the fact that they have to be there. The overrun is not that significant. It might well be that you're just spreading a lot of the same fees over a slightly longer period, but there will be some uplift because there are other things like I would have more reporting to do, and things like that than was originally planned.
Sheila, can I just ask you as well, when you do building and you have like the different fixing levels, you could have more if you had a slippage, because obviously one set of skilled workers rely on the previous work being done before they start on it. So there's that element as well, isn't there?
I mean, there's a big element in here. The
Yes.
big unknown on this whole project is how long the build is going to take.
Yeah.
And that is, we'll get some clarification on that on paper when it comes to
Yeah.
awarding the contract. Once
Yes.
we get the contracts in, so by sometime around mid-July, we'll have a good idea of how long the contract market thinks this project
Yeah,
is going to take.
Because you don't want.
But what you don't know
Yes.
is what's going to happen during the contract to
Yeah.
give us a problem.
Yeah.
You know, when we suddenly discover that there's a structural problem that is going to require steel to be manufactured that is going to take 2 months to get, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it because it's bespoke work to resolve it. These things happen.
Yeah, they do.
And
Yeah.
we do have, you know, the 18 months that's estimated is sort of allowing for a degree of things will go wrong.
Yeah.
And it might well, you know, when you do have problems, it doesn't necessarily result in slippage. It might be that you just end up not doing this bit over here
Yeah, but
and doing a
move.
bit somewhere else
Yeah.
instead. And that's part of the reason that the design team and the QS in particular have been very focused at making sure that they're sort of reusing the same skills as much as possible. And by that, I mean, you know, if you need people to do sort of constructional joinery work, or you need people to do brickwork, that you don't have someone specialist required for this little stretch, do it in the same materials as
Yeah.
you're using elsewhere, because then that gives you a lot more flexibility when you actually come to work on the
Yeah.
project.
So you're not having.
So something's wrong
yeah.
over there, but actually you can then put the brickies on here
Yeah,
instead.
move them
Okay.
around. Yes, thank you, councillor Brooks.
Is there any chance it could come in quicker?
Absolutely.
If we get a good builder, is there any chance that actually could?
Yes, I mean, there's good reason to get it done as quickly as you possibly can, because then of course you get the money in faster and you move on to another job.
Yeah.
So that's why when we were talking with the procurement consultant earlier, we were talking about methodology. It may well be that someone has an interesting approach. They think that if they do this, they can do the new build over here at the same time as they're doing something else, and they can run a bigger team. So, you know, we're very much in the hands of the constructors to tell us how they think it might be. But I should also say that this is estimated in at 78 weeks. It could well be that, you know, we're wrong. I've got 380 working days in there. It could be longer. We'll see. You know, we'll see.
Councillor Pearce.
So obviously we monitor the project budget anyway in these meetings and at full council, but in terms of where it all sits in with the wider budget, and particularly if anything comes out at any stage, but particularly after the construction appointment, which we won't know about until 4 months' time. If anything comes out that has out of project scope implications, can we have like this year and next year, can we have like, well, one at least, more if we need it, standalone when we come to do the budget meetings at the end of the year, one that just concentrates on the town hall and this
Yeah.
project?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Bear in mind, of course, that when you sign the contract with the main contractor, you are fixing the prices to a large degree.
Yeah.
There will be elements where we do have provisional sums and we will only find out what they cost later down the line. But that was why we want the specification as tight as possible,
Yes.
because then you're fixing the price and you're fixing it at today's costs. So.
Yeah.
Right, so let me just run down because I don't want to take forever on this. The next stream of activity is interpretation. Oh, I've got a blue one in there. Look at that. Must have added that and forgotten to colour it. Right, that should be pink. So interpretation is pink. This is the work that People Landscape Buildings are doing. You'll remember that they're the ones that are fitting out the Heritage Gallery and various bits and pieces around the building.
Yeah.
And they're currently working through REBA 4. And integrating it with the building design. So they're doing their detailed design, but they are quite a bit later in delivering REBA 4 than the design for the building. So what we've been focusing on at the moment is them working out what they're going to do in their areas that will affect how the building is, and making sure that everything is seamless. The technology that they need to have in place, the power supplies and so on, lighting is all taken into account. We've obviously got various bits and pieces happening there. I'm not going to go through every step on this. I'm just trying to orientate you so that you can then look through the PDF that I sent you, perhaps with slightly fresher eyes. And you can see that, there's an awful lot of arrows coming here, there and everywhere. And that's just showing how this project is intertwined and how different bits hand off to each other. And the interdependencies are going to be part of what brings it in. Now, again, the building project is the biggest, chunkiest bit, and it's the bit that everything else hangs off. So if we're late in getting practical completion on the building, we'll be holding up what's happening on the interpretation side. There's a knock-on effect on all of those interdependencies. So this one here, the next one, the activity plan and community engagement, as you can see, 1,285 days duration. This summary task is basically just adding up everything that's lying underneath. Well, it's actually working out how long it takes to get from where it starts to where it ends. And that's what this long bar is showing you. This is saying, these are all my tasks underneath, which is why I colour them, because it's easier to understand what's a subtask. Evaluation, we've just appointed the evaluation consultants, and again it's another long task because they're evaluating this plan as well as our outcomes, our economic outcomes. So the evaluator I should be meeting with shortly to plan out how we're going to capture the baselines for economic outcomes. We want to make sure that we know what the footfall on the high street is today, so that we can see what it is in 2 years' time and 4 years' time. And we have said in the tender that we want an interim evaluation report. So I'm suggesting that we'll get that probably February. We might push that out a wee bit depending on how much activity we've actually been able to deliver.
That's the evaluation consultant, isn't it?
That's the evaluation consultant is to produce. We said in the tender we wanted an interim evaluation report as well as a final one. Much as we had Harriet do in the last phase, where she gave us an interim report that said, actually, some of these people aren't getting engaged because you're not going to the right people. And so we sort of changed a little bit about who we were partnering with in order to get to some of the right people. So that's this report is important for that reason, and that's why it's shown as sort of feeding into our activities generally. And then we get a final evaluation report, and that will be delivered right up at the back end of the project in 2028. And that will need to be delivered to the Heritage Fund and the Towns Fund and to ESC to say, thank you for your investment. This is kind of what you got for your money. Here's what we said we'd achieve, and this is what happened. Here's why we did so well here. Here's why we did badly there. This is what we tried to do about it, and it just explains the overall position.
Just quickly, something I just thought of that flashed across my head. Obviously, during the period of this, between now and 2028, there'll be a lot of demolition and building work in the centre of the town, which isn't obviously actually to do with the town hall, but is to do with other things in other places, bearing in mind the East Suffolk projects that they're working on. So obviously that awareness will have to be built in, thinking about the economic angle, as to there might be dips and troughs that are outside of our control, that aren't necessarily to do with the success of otherwise of the town hall.
There will be, so there's all those risk elements in there.
It's just a thought.
And and there's the seafront projects, for example, have to take into account Armistice Day and seasonal activities and things like that. There's all sorts of things.
Okay, Councillor Pearce.
So in terms of that final report, which it might be Ben who needs to answer, Ben and Helen who need to answer this one, because the deadline for spending the Towns Fund money is actually like 2.5 years before then. Is there going to be like some legacy team in government that's going to be handling like because all these projects are going to finish in spring 26, a bit like when the Coastal Communities Fund closed in England and Wales, there was a government department that handled all the legacy stuff around projects that had funding. Will the same apply to Towns funded projects?
That's a good point.
Seems so, but can't confirm for sure because they haven't confirmed that to us. But I'm sure there will, because the outputs and outcomes are longer than 2026. I'm sure there will be some government monitoring of some sort. Someone's going to pick it up. So there'll still be a requirement, I'm sure.
I had assumed that would be the case, but actually you make a good point, Andy, that I need to factor into this plan, writing a completion, an end of funding report specifically for the Towns Fund for March 2026 to show how we've spent the money and to wrap up what's been achieved to date.
Which is a nice day.
And invite them to the opening thing.
Yes. Well, that's what that is a nice day, because that's round about not the end of the project, as you said, but when it goes operational, there is something tangible there to see.
Yeah.
The difficulty, of course, is that, as Ben has said, the outcomes rely on operating the place. Some of the outcomes rely on operating the place for a couple of years to see whether or not you've made the difference. So there's normally a follow-up report. So that's fine. We can deliver that in 2028. It's really what we do around that end of funding. We need to.
I just can't confirm what it is at the moment because they haven't told us.
So I just want to move on quickly. The next thing is business development. And this is something that we've sort of started to touch on, but there's a huge amount of work on business development, and that's partly what you hired me for, was following on from the business plan and saying it's all very well writing a business plan, now we need to deliver it. And the first thing that I'm looking to do, as you can see, I'm planning to start at the back end of April, is to review the business plan and update the financials. And we need to take into account what's happened since the last time the business plan was done. Quite a lot. I've got a list of, I'll have notes in here. Let me just have a look at these. Look, here we go. So looking at how the market's changed, I've got to take into account on costs, because the on costs for LTC staff is much higher than is in the business plan, and making sure that staff are integrated, the team. This actually could be, I could move some of this down into another task, but this is about making sure that the team are integrated, salaries and grades and so on, that they actually fit within your structures, and that there's parity, that it's equal pay for equal responsibilities, and getting that right. We need to look at the co-working space regarding the competition, because there's co-working coming along in, I think this, has the station got it, but certainly the cultural quarters got it in there. The registrar's rental income has come back at a fraction of what we had in the business plan, because that was based on what you pay here. We need to do a detailed plan review looking at the VAT position, and going through all of that with
Oh,
the
right.
VAT
Yeah,
advice that you
yeah.
had. And then we need to update the pricing models to work out and to look at the things that the building isn't going to lend itself to do. Like we've got income from conferences, but I don't see that the conference is going to be as easy with the council chamber being restricted in its AV capacity because we've got nowhere to put great big screens and things.
Yeah,
And it's not a conference if you're doing it on a pop-up screen.
no,
It's not offering that service. So we need to make sure that the event space can do it and to take into account what impact that has on the operational income.
right, okay,
Right.
thank you. Councillor Pearce?
So I think out those things that were in that pop-up box, co-working, this is one I raised before at the design stage because we've got, as you've just mentioned, Sheila, three regeneration projects in town that are all going to be targeting co-working. And what I will be interested to know is whether there is enough demand to go around or whether we're actually going to be competing for the same resource with other projects. Because we wouldn't really want to be undermining each other in an ideal world, would we, like these projects? So I think we need to understand that. I think the other one, and I'm being deliberately careful what I say because we are in public session, but we had a conversation about, we as a council have made a decision that all our staff, whether they are office based, outdoor based, like our ground maintenance staff, they're all going to have access to the local government pension scheme. Okay, that we're not going to have different terms and conditions for different categories of staff as we've been expanding. That was a policy decision we made. Obviously, it has financial implications in budgeting. And so when it comes to the town hall, we are potentially going to have, because originally also with the cafe, we were talking about an outside operator, and now we're talking about so potentially we're going to have cafe staff who are, you know, we're not really going to say well ground maintenance staff can be in it, but cafe staff can go in a stakeholder pension scheme. So we're going to have a discussion inside about whether, because we've made a policy decision that has generated those additional on costs, we've effectively impacted the project in that way. So we're going to need to have that internal discussion because we're, you know, although there will be business in the town hall that we want to offset the costs of running it, we are not primarily, the council is not primarily here to function as a business and make a profit. We have to have that appropriate balance between public service and financial responsibility, but we're not an overtly profit-making organisation. So we need to understand to what extent we have impacted that model and consider how we deal with that and whether we start putting funds aside, you know, like in the what's the next budget, 25-26, to smooth the transition.
Yes, I think that's really important. I think one of the other things in looking at a review of the business plan is to just consider how that how the cafe is run. Because I don't think that the decision to bring it in-house was something that as a group you actually took. I don't quite know how it happened. Between stage 1 and stage 2, a decision was taken that it was coming in-house. But it has significant implications for risk and for organizational management. But to take them out means that you aren't creating, well, you're indirectly creating jobs, not directly creating them.
I think
We just
probably
need to be mindful about the outcomes that we've promised and the differences that we've said we will deliver.
I think subsidy control advice had a lot to do with it. As in if we had a commercial operator, would we be using public money to unfairly subsidise a commercial operation?
Yes.
Well, if you are, that's really interesting for the cultural quarter.
Yeah.
Mm.
But the cafe was specifically mentioned.
But the
Yes,
subsidy
was.
control advice was
Interesting.
the decision was taken a year before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was taken when we sorry, I said between stage 1 and 2. It was between our
Yeah.
bid and getting the funding.
Not expecting it to happen.
And approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, right, we're now back on having come back from a fire evacuation situation. So we're now back with councillor Pearce on item 71, the project manager's report.
Yeah, so I just want to pick up on the comments I was making about the subsidy control advice we received, but fundamentally, all I want to say is this neither full council nor the clerk. Well, I mean, no officer would have executive authority to say we're doing this or we're doing that anyway. But there hasn't even been a full council hasn't even been asked to make a decision. Never mind made one on a cafe operator model. There have been quite lengthy discussions within the project committee around what would be appropriate in a building that's got a heavy community focus. Should we go commercial? Should we go community? Should we go direct management? But there has been no decision. So if Sheila is coming to relook at the financials as part of the business plan, then she should feel that she has a free hand and not feel that she's constrained by a decision that's already been made, because it hasn't.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you, councillor Brooks.
Well, I mean, it might not have been made explicitly, but it might have been endorsed in a bigger report. So it might be that we didn't discuss it in full council as a separate issue, but in the models that we have approved in full council, it might be one of those.
Yes, but Sheila has a free hand to review the model, is
Yeah.
all I'm saying. There is no overarching decision that is non-negotiable.
That's good,
Right.
thank you. So
Okay,
just
thank
finishing
you.
off on this, because obviously we need to get cracking and move the meeting forward. Lots of different steps on business development. I don't think we should underestimate the effort that is in there, because this business and operational structure and functions and pricing and marketing and policies and so on are all going to be are critical to make sure that the town hall runs smoothly, that it is effective, and that you don't end up running at a loss. It's got to be a pretty tight ship. And
Can I
part
just
of-
say on that point, Sheila, looking at your timeline there, we will need to know before the end of the calendar year what model we're locked into, because if we are going to be doing a direct management and having staff, we will need to make allowance in the budget for the staffing costs.
Exactly. And the other thing to say is to agree the handoffs and responsibilities with Lowestoft Town Council itself, with the admin team. And if I just have a look at the notes on that, just to let you think about that. I'm not going to run through all of these things, but if you were running a cafe, then obviously your VAT returns are horrific. And are you in a VAT? Is the town hall a separate entity? Is it in a VAT group with the council? Are you all under one VAT heading? How does this all work? What does it mean in terms of payroll? What does it mean for the people that you have working in admin at the moment? You know, James, the finance officer, presumably does the VAT returns. And if that's the case, then this job is going to go quite a lot bigger, and I don't know what accounting system you use and whether it does your VAT for you. You probably don't need it yet, but you'll sure need something when you move on to. Does it work it all out? Okay, that's good.
What I would say though, Sheila,
There's a lot to do in
if you have a standalone meeting with Sarah and James on the finance, because we are looking at financial support for James in staffing anyway. So obviously if you speak with them, because then they can consider how that, if we're going to bring in a new finance officer to support James, what their respective roles are going to be and how that can be divvied out.
And of course that unfortunately is somewhat because the town hall will be a beast to run, but if it's the town hall with included in that all of the cafe and sort of in-house catering activity as well, then there's just this exponential pile of bills to be paid. And how do we do that? And how does the bookkeeping get managed?
Yeah, and also thinking you'd have what I call your everyday cafe customers, but then if you're going to have events, you're going to have weddings, which will be hopefully big ones, so that you're going to have quite a lot of increased expenditure and VAT receipts. So you've got to deal with every now and again,
Yeah.
that'll be scattered across the year, won't it?
Yeah,
So
and you've got-
that's quite big.
Yeah, and you've got complexities in terms of, you know, if you're renting out a meeting room,
Yeah,
that's normally 0 rated. As soon as you've got anything other than teas and coffees being delivered, the whole supply is 20%. So there's a lot of complexity in there to be managed, and you need
Yes.
to understand the way the business runs. So I'm flagging up is that
yeah,
although we've got a town hall team,
yes,
there's a lot of handoffs to the admin team that is going to increase their work too, which
yes.
you know, you need to be aware of that, and they don't
Mhm.
really need more work, frankly. Right, just the last thing at the end, a soft launch, I think, is a very important thing for us to factor into this. That whatever we do, there'll be a compulsion to get the town hall up and running, and open as soon as we possibly can. I think it's really important that we still allow ourselves a 2-week period where we are occupying the town hall. You know, if we're whoever's running the cafe, however that's running, that it's
Yeah.
run as on a soft basis, as in friends and family invited to come along for a day to do it, and that we actually all learn how the building works
Yes.
and that we've got it right. Because once this building opens, there will be an influx of people, particularly in the early days. People are going to be really interested in how this building works. And we need to know that we can run it.
Yeah,
And this thing, the soft launch, is the thing that always gets binned because you've promised everyone it's going to be open by a certain date, and you bin the soft launch because you do. Anyway, enough of all this. I'm finished
Right.
talking about the programme plan. There's not much to say about the other bits, I don't believe. Yeah,
yes,
right.
yeah,
The timetable for procurement of the main building contract, I've already laid that out in my report.
yes.
I don't think there's much that we can do about that other than to say we're trying our hardest to stick to it, and you've seen the implications if we don't.
Councillor Pearce?
So, I'll raise it under this item because there's not a standalone item to raise it under. But we've decided internally that because of the high value and the specialist and technical knowledge that's required in connection with the main building contract, that we want to engage specialist procurement advice around that contract. And we've discussed we're below 3 quotes territory. We're in 3 estimates. So we've discussed who we want to appoint. So Finance and Governance has already approved it. If this committee wants to go ahead and appoint us, put the budget allocation and authorization in place with a delegation to this committee to appoint. So I would like to propose that I'm not going to mention the name because we're in public session, and I don't think we should mention the name unless and until that person accepts the appointment. But the party that we have been discussing, I would like to propose that we do appoint based on the quote received and the quote and CV received.
Okay, councillor Brooks?
I'll second.
Okay, and a vote, please. Thank you. That's all. Councillor Rappensberger, were you?
I wasn't present, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Thank you. Okay, you're right with that, Tony. You got that. Okay, thank you. And you've got there.
So 71.3 is the
3.
engagement events for possible contractors. On the
Yes.
basis that you have just agreed to appoint a procurement advisor,
Mhm.
then I will have a conversation with them to just double check that it is permissible for us to have our open day at the town hall on the 15th of April.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And
I'm
you-
expecting the answer will be yes, but I'd like to double check. And if
Yeah, and then you get back to us
Yes,
for.
yes.
Yeah.
we've got a dog, I don't need to bark, it's
Yes.
fine.
Sheila and I have had this conversation about would it be permissible or not, so.
So
we
let's
hope
ask
it
the
is.
expert.
Yeah, we
Yes,
can
yeah.
now ask
Yeah,
the expert.
Exactly, yeah.
Belt and braces. Yeah, thank you. 71.4, the boundary agreement and process of registering with the land registry. Is that Sarah? Was that?
That's Helen.
Oh, no, that's the other one I'm thinking
Yes.
of. Yes. It's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going through the process. It's taken longer than I would hope for. In
Right.
terms of, I've been informed today that there needs to be evaluation of the land
Right.
prior to make sure it's within the relevant limited value limits.
Right.
but it can be signed off pending that by the director.
Right.
So it's whether we submit a letter of support with the condition that it's to be transferred pending that valuation, or whether if that would be acceptable for the town council and the Heritage Fund, or whether the permission to start can go without the letter.
Okay, Sheila.
So we need the letter for permission to start, but we've had notification from the Heritage Fund this morning.
All right.
Hang on, I could stop sharing this so you can't see what I'm doing. That'd be good. You don't really need to see my entire inbox. Right. We've had communication from the Heritage Fund this morning who have said that we can submit the PTS documentation.
Right. Which is permission to start if people. want
Which
to
is,
do
sorry,
this.
permission to start.
No, it's all right. I'm just
documentation.
thinking there might be
You
people.
found it, do you want me to-
Yes, I
Yes.
found it. So Mark
There we
Dykes
got
has
it.
said, if we submit our PTS request and use that as leverage, as in we will have submitted PTS and all other documentation, but oh God, no, he's not being helped. Mark has replied suggesting that you submit permission to start with the ESC letter to follow.
Right.
So I think what Ellen is saying is that we can submit and say the ESC letter is to come. That would be
Right.
my preference,
Right.
principally because I think if we say it's subject to valuation, HLF's
They might.
legal department are going to get cold feet on that, because what happens if they discover it's worth a fortune?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how the bit round the back of the bike racks is going to be worth it, but
No. Right. Helen, did you want to?
so my suggestion is that we submit all the other documentation
Right.
and that East Suffolk Council get the evaluation done as quickly as possible. But I'm very concerned that things are not moving swiftly in the assets team.
Right, Helen.
I've kind of asked assets to liaise directly with Sarah as well
Oh, that
to
sounds
see
good.
whether that
Yeah.
can move things forward.
Would that help?
And I've chased 3 times now for the contact to get in touch with me and they haven't to date. Unfortunately.
Oh dear. Right. Yeah, we'd appreciate that if you could do that, Helen. That would be good. Councillor Pearce.
Yeah. So, and can this be relayed? I mean, through Ben and Helen, but if necessary, can it be escalated? Because we had the advance payment on the Towns Fund and ESC money, which has been enormously helpful. But obviously, at the rate we're having to pay professional fees before we get permission to start and get a reclaim, but now, you know, we're paying directly like 162,000 for an electric substation, so we're paying that interim pending a reclaim. We don't want 162,000 out of the town council accounts for any longer than is absolutely essential. So and the longer this is held up within ESC, the longer we are exposed to that capital being out of the accounts. So if that can be escalated to an appropriate decision maker, please, who can liaise between those departments, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, thank you. So Sarah, you said you have chased and right. Councillor Brooks.
Sheila's proposing that she submits the documentation for permission to start, and I think we should, if she needs our approval, give her the permission to do that.
but what
Yeah, the other one, yeah.
submit the documentation, say the letter to follow, and then the letter takes another 4 or 5 months,
Yes,
that creates exposure for us.
yes.
So the two things, you know, we can submit the documentation saying the letters to follow, that's fine, but that shouldn't imply that the other bit can then take it through.
Oh, no,
No.
I don't think that at all. And without being disrespectful, the East Suffolk Council's legal team is notoriously slow.
Well, I don't have any direct dealings with them, and that's.
Well, I have,
that's my
and
worry.
notoriously slow.
Yeah.
But yes, it does need to be, maybe we could use Chris Valley.
That's why I said appropriate escalation.
All right.
Right,
Yeah, I've been
Okay.
diplomatic.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
we are in public session, remember?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you say
I think I already have your authority to do permission to
Right,
start.
so we
It is my job
Yes, that's
that you
job.
appointed me to do.
So,
So
so,
we don't
so my
need-
proposal is then that Sheila goes ahead and submits permission to start under our existing authority on the basis that she has suggested, saying the letter of support on this land is to follow, but that we ask the ESC members of this committee to appropriately escalate within their authority to try and expedite a decision on this land, bearing in mind the capital financial exposure to the town council, which is funding the
Yes.
purchase cost of the substation on an interim basis, pending a reclaim, which can't happen until we get permission to start.
Right, Sheila, you were gonna.
Yes, can I just suggest that it might be helpful if the clerk was to speak to the chief exec at East Suffolk, because it was originally he who gave his commitment to support this. Would
Yes,
that be
yes.
helpful?
Yes.
I know how frustrating it is to get things happening with priorities within your organisation, but if
that
that
is-
would be helpful.
That is my proposal about appropriate escalation. So
Right.
whoever does it, whether it's Ben and Helen or the clerk, and if it goes to Chris Bailey, that's fine. But if we don't
Yeah.
prescribe the escalation, and that is
Right.
just sorted between the people
Yeah.
that need to know.
Helen has just put her hand up there, yeah.
It has been, obviously, the mandate has come from Chris Valley to progress with this, and he is supportive and wants this to happen. I think it's just stuck in technicalities at the moment.
Right,
Okay,
okay.
but the people who it is stuck with technicalities need to understand that the risk to the town council is more than technical. It is capital financial risk.
Yeah.
And that needs to be relayed to whoever is been tasked with doing it.
Okay, Helen, did you want?
I do agree with Andy, yes.
Yeah, okay, so, thank you.
So Andy made a proposal.
So that, do you want a second? Yeah. And a vote, please, to, yeah, basically escalate and follow through. And Sheila's already got that other permission. Okay, thank you. So that was 71.4. 72, to receive a list of planned actions on the project manager to be authorised for progression.
You have my list of actions already
Yes.
in the progress plan. The only
Yes.
ones to add to that is to actually submit permission to start, as we've just agreed. And the
Right.
other one is to liaise with the procurement consultant, because I
Oh,
think most
yes.
of that work
Yeah.
will be on me.
Right, okay. Councillor Pearce?
So for avoidance of doubt, just in case there is anything that is not already captured by existing delegation to do, I propose that we exercise the delegation that sits with us to give
Yes.
Sheila the permission to progress the agreed pre-permission to start actions, including the two specific additional items that Sheila has just mentioned.
Okay, I'll second that, and a vote, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. 73, to receive an update on the heads of terms for the registrars, including consideration of the rent appraisal. Some aspects may be confidential. Do you think the information we've got, is that confidential, Sarah? Okay. 74, to consider appointing a member of the public to this committee and making a recommendation to full council to approve the change to the terms of reference. Councillor Brooks?
Yes,
Can I just say, Wendy, don't
No,
mention
no,
names, yeah?
past my lips.
Thank you.
No names. Somebody approached me and said they very much like to be involved with the town hall project. I shared that information, I think, with everybody except for Ben and Helen. Sorry, Ben and Helen. Basically, it's somebody who's has experience in things, member of the community, very much like to be involved. So having talked with Sarah and Sheila, the suggestion, which I fully support, is that we can't just grab people off the street and say you can be on it. We need a process to do it. And because we have other committees that have non-councillor members on it, it is possible we can, as a council, we can do it. So the suggestion was that we put together as a kind of spec for who we need to be on the committee. I would suggest that we tie people down, because I think the area of expertise we might be needing is in construction and that kind of things. I don't know. I mean, Sheila's nodding her head already. No, 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 no. Basically, they have to be supportive of the town hall project. That is number one.
Yeah.
It is not an avenue for people who are completely against support. So support for the town hall project, fundamental. And I would suggest that we look to no more than 2 people.
I think that was Helen came.
It's
You come
really,
in.
it's really encouraging that some members of the public are interested in the town
Yes.
hall and what it's going to become. So it's really exciting that people are actually, you know, really supportive of the project. I do have some reservations, not necessarily knowing the person who's kind of made that approach. I think we'd need to look at their skill set, but also understanding, is there a skills gap within the existing project board? I mean, the committee group, in terms of actually understanding, is that role needed? And obviously, and how kind of, what value would that bring to the group if that appointment happened?
Yeah, and there's the same as with other committees. We've got members of the public who participate, which particularly on climate and the ecological emergency, is the commitment to confidentiality, which will be particularly important on this because of the commercial element. So it's really important, isn't it, that is that built in. Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, so obviously I have the advantage over Ben and Helen of knowing who this person is, and they do have previous involvement in this project in a different capacity. And that's what we need to remember, is that the capacity that they previously had in this project would not be the capacity that they have if they came in as a member of the public. The fundamental difference between this and non-councillor members on other committees that we will have to bear in mind is that on this committee, to be quorate, and this is very much to do with whether decisions made are Lowestoft Town Council decisions or not, the number of members present and voting, that the number of town councillor members must be at least 50% of those present and voting. So if we are going to have the 2 existing non-councillor members plus 2 more, 4, that means to be quorate, we must have at least 4 town councillors present at every meeting to balance that off. And therefore, to make sure that doesn't create quorum problems for us, we need to make sure that the town council members are available and committed to attend every meeting. Otherwise, we're going to have quorum problems, because if we have 4 non-council members turn up, we're going to need 4 council members and 8 people present. And that is a consideration that we don't have on other committees, and that is because this is a project committee. It goes to the heart of who's making the decision for things like VAT reclamation and so on like that on the grant funding.
Okay, Councillor Brooks.
Well, I'm not sure what you're saying, Andy. Are you saying we shouldn't have it?
No, we're
Or
not
are
saying
you
at all.
saying,
I'm not saying at all. I'm saying if we have 2 members of the
one
public,
then?
I think 1 would probably be preferable,
Right.
because then that means we have 3 non-councillor members. That means to be quorate, we'd only need to have 3 town councillors. Well, we regularly have 3. When we've got 4 here today, sometimes we have 5. So it would only generally be illness or work that prevented 3 people being here. 4 should not be a problem, but could be at certain times of the year. Yeah, we need to make sure that because we are dealing with grant funding and, you know, under financial regs, if we have the town councillor members being outnumbered by the non-town councillor members, then that could open us to challenge on who's actually made certain financial decisions. So that's my only caveat in saying that, yes, we have non-councillor members and other committees. That's the fundamental difference between having non-councillor members here. The non-councillor members we currently have are from another authority which has a significant financial stake in the project, and that's why that body is represented. But I have no problem fundamentally, and I have no problem certainly with the person in mind. But I guess the other thing there is that because we can't simply appoint an individual, we'd have to throw it out. People can put in. We would need to make sure we're not predetermined towards one person.
Sheila,
Andy's just answered it.
okay, right. So
So, okay, I will modify my proposal to, this committee will appoint a member of the public to sit on the town hall project committee. I don't know, do we need to include that do we need to be specific at this stage about, obviously confidentiality is
It's
important.
key.
Obviously support of the town, but can we delegate that work?
It's a recommendation to
staff?
full council, right?
Yeah.
So I suggest it goes to full council if the majority of people here say so. And then when it goes out to public, rather than prescribe it, we ask the member of the public to say what their interest is in the town hall project and what they think they can bring to the table in terms of experience and ability.
Helen?
Obviously, I think this conversation's like kick-started because someone's made an approach,
Mm,
councillor Brooks. But it's understanding actually, is that role needed within the project board? Is there a need within to have a community representation on the board, and understanding what's kind of like skills and expertise we are looking for to plug that gap within the board?
Could I just speak to you up there, out of mic range, and I'll tell you, can I?
Well, oh, you're gonna have sneak it, you're gonna whisper.
I don't want the public broadcast.
Can you do that?
Oh, why
Uh,
not having their secret chat? Can I answer? Can I answer?
Can we, right,
The point that was raised by Helen. I-
councillor Pearce, I think actually that we need to come back to the committee because we're being filmed here. He's not hearing, is he? No. Councillor Pearce, we'll have to do this in confidential session because obviously we're in public and it just looks a bit
Yes.
odd.
So basically,
If we can just come back to the,
to be clear, Chair, the only reason was because Helen and Ben did not have the knowledge that the rest of the members did. I was just telling her who the person is who has approached the council.
yeah, well, I think we
That's
need
it.
to do that in confidential session.
So
Okay.
could I just answer Helen
Right.
about a member of the public being on the committee? The town hall project is massively supported locally. We're very fortunate that we have that support. As you say, for somebody actually to approach us to say, I want to be on this committee,
Yeah,
particularly if it's somebody who has
yes.
experience of working in industry, that could be very, very valuable. Because I don't think any other committee member, councillor has that background.
Right, well, I think either we need to move this into confidential or as councillor Pearce has said, it goes to, it can go to full council. But I think if we need to discuss this in more detail, put into the job spec, almost like a person spec or whatever, or if it's Helen's suggestion who mentioned about skill set, we'd have to do an audit of all our skills on here before we could do that, which we can't do at the current moment. So,
Can I make a suggestion, Chair?
councillor Pearce,
Um,
I think we need to.
Well, I think
pin
fundamentally,
this down.
without being disrespectful to anyone,
No,
there is not a need for this person in the sense that we would be able to progress quite adequately without a member of the public. That does not mean that a member of the public with certain professional background might not be
yeah,
beneficial, but need as in dependency, no. But I don't see the point in going into confidential session today when we are not going to be able to make a decision anyway. It can only be recommended to full council. So if Wendy wants to make the recommendation, I'm happy to support the recommendation so that it goes to full council. And then if Ben and Helen want to feed into the office before it goes to full council, so that
Yeah.
information is relayed to the full council to be taken into account in their decision making, I'd be happy to do that. But we cannot be predisposed towards one person because we've had an approach.
no, thank you. Sheila, just wanted a quick word there. on
Just
that.
from sitting on the outside listening to this, can I
Yes.
suggest that we put this on the agenda for the next project steering committee?
Yes.
And that we draft up something about what it is we're looking for the person to do,
Yes,
what voting rights they'll have,
yeah, that's
and
key.
what the selection process and so on, and then we could agree on that, and it would be something that was fully formed to go to full council.
Yes,
Would that work?
And by that time, Ben and Helen will have the same knowledge as the rest of us.
yeah,
I was just with You just have to be
Okay.
careful to not set a precedent, and you don't want to,
Exactly.
you don't want to have lots of representations come at all different stages of this project. You need to,
Yes.
if you're going to go out for someone, you need to do it in a process, one-off process potentially, so.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
in a year's time, you might get 20 or 30 people
Exactly.
who want to do that.
Yeah.
And yes, so you need to think forward on this one as well as now. Councillor Brooks.
I see no harm in waiting. So
Yeah.
April is our next project meeting, where we have an opportunity to put together something more meaningful, can go to April full council. Given the length of this project,
Yeah.
in the great scheme of things, it doesn't matter,
No.
that is, it'll be time well spent, so
Yeah.
that we don't end up in a
Oh,
mess.
okay, well, we've had,
So I'm happy to defer my proposal basically,
So-
and simply ask for it to be on the next agenda. So
Yeah.
there's no proposal at the moment.
okay, thank you.
Agree totally. I
Okay.
think that's eminently sensible because we're in a difficult position at the moment because I've just told Helen who it is and what the significance, but Ben doesn't know. And I think it's best that we all discuss it from the same starting point.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, moving on because I have to leave at 12. And then it'll be when we have to go into standing orders. 75 to review the updated risk register.
Yes,
Sheila?
thank you. So I issued you the risk register earlier in the week.
Yes.
Just to summarise, we've actually managed to delete a risk because full funding has been secured.
Yes.
Hurrah! The first risk
Brilliant.
that's been struck off. And the other two risks that I've
Excellent.
added are to do with the tender, and it's
Right.
about how one of the risks is that we don't get enough tenders for the main contract, and the other one is about ensuring that we procure that we don't get any challenges against the main contract tender decisions. I think with the decision that we've taken on the procurement consultant, I just want you to register that those are on there, and I'm probably going to amend the risks to take them down a bit because you've agreed that we need expert advice, and that will help on both those fronts.
Okay,
And that's all that I need to say about the risk
okay,
register.
great. Thanks very much.
Hang on.
Item 70, councillor Brooks.
No, I just want to say, I don't know if I misunderstood because I missed the beginning of the meeting, but it seemed to me he was saying that the work that had been done so far in terms of the organisation meant that he had a lot of information. So it would be very helpful. It wasn't like he was being given scraps.
Yeah.
He'd be given quality, lots of information, lots of dates that he felt he could really work with.
Yes, I think the procurement consultant felt that there was I don't think he hasn't seen all the stuff, but the fact that we're producing a bill of quantities, for example, is good news. It helps the tender process. So yes, you're right.
Okay, thank you. 76 to consider any recommendations to full council. I think we've done that during the meeting, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got the one about the delegation for
Yes.
the heritage manager.
Yeah, we've done that one. Right. 77 date of the next meeting is Thursday, the 11th of April, 2024 at 10 a.m. 78 items for the next agenda and close, which we've flagged those up during the meeting. Are there any more? Sheila, you haven't got any? No.
No.
Okay, thank you, Helen and Ben. I think covered those and councillors. 79, to resolve that under the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that publicity would be prejudicial to public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, namely any legal issues relating to the matters on this agenda. If I can have a proposer.
It's just for the registrars, right?
There's two things. Yeah. A proposer, councillor Rattenberger, and a seconder, councillor Pearce, and a vote, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. And we'll wait for the owl to be switched off. And if you've been watching at home, thank you. We're now going into confidential session.